Hanahan 2040 is moving right along. Today, I talk one-on-one with Hanahan Mayor Christie Rainwater about the city's comprehensive plan for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Hanahan Mayor Christie Rainwater, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks so much, Quintin. It's always so good to see you.
You're very welcome. Well, I basically want to pick up where Layla Gulen of Fox 24 News Now left off with your recent interview with her, and that is the Hanahan 2040, which is a pathway to the future of the city, which is also intended to represent a shared community vision and provide a roadmap for achieving the community's goals in the future. Let me ask you this, Mayor. I know that when you spoke with Layla in that interview, that you basically said, hey, there's a final plan in place. How long did that actually take for you all?
The plan for the 2040 comp plan took an extremely long time, and I'm grateful for that because I really feel like they got all the information they needed. It wasn't a quick, let's have a quick meeting, throw it together. It was over a year long where we gathered public input. And the one thing I was really proud of our team for doing was it wasn't just, hey, you come to us, we're having this meeting, but we went to them. We had tons of events throughout the past year and a half where we've shown up at the event, had a table set up where people could do the survey. We even had in our Christmas parade a QR code plastered on the back of our fire truck with Santa, where people could scan the QR code while they're sitting at the Christmas parade and do the survey online. So the survey was offered online, it was offered at city events, and we did purposefully also set up specific times where people could come to City Hall or come to their local fire station and comment on whatever they wanted to see throughout the city. As it's called a comprehensive plan, it truly is comprehensive. What do you want the city of Hanahan to look like over the next 20 years? And so it took about a year and a half to gather all of that information and compile it together. And then we recently voted on it as a city council and it passed. Of course, we want to do what the public is asking for. And so we heard their voices loud and clear.
And you heard their voices loud and clear, that is. So how many people actually participated in this particular survey?
You know what? I don't have a final number, truthfully, because every time there was an event, there was a different group of people. So maybe it was 10 here, 50 there, 200 on the online. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but we got a really good mix because the events were held throughout the city at different times. One of my favorite ones was a mom that brought her kids, and these young boys got up and they shared what they want their city to look like. And I really valued that because the truth is they're the next generation that's going to be ushering in as leadership and looking to it. So for them at such young ages to already have some vision and to be able to express that clearly to leadership so we can incorporate it in. So we had all ages, all backgrounds, all different parts of the city giving their feedback. So it was really a good model of everyone from the city giving their feedback.
And I know this might be a difficult question to ask you, but what was the biggest demographic involved with this survey?
I don't know if we had one really more than another. I mean, I do feel like there are times where our seniors come out a little stronger and they're really purposeful about being involved. But like I said, I really did see young ones. And because we showed up at family events, I did see a lot of families too. So I don't think I could answer just a pinpoint. I would honestly say there was a wide demographic that I don't feel like it was just one specific group more than another, but really a variety of what the city of Hanahan looks like. It's beautiful. And we got all those different voices in there.
So what does the city of Hanahan look like right now? I know that's a silly question.
It is really cool. Actually, I love answering this question because the city of Hanahan is what I like to refer to as multi-generational. So it is not uncommon for me to be at my son's basketball game and have my parents with me and the siblings with me. And right next door is my friend Lynn and her parents are there and her kids are on the court. So we have, the families with grandma and grandpa and younger siblings really throughout the city. It's actually super important because it's something that we're looking to expand on is senior housing within the city because we don't have a ton of that and people that live there want to stay there. They don't want to have to leave the city when they're ready to retire or looking to downsize. And so we are trying to keep that family feel from birth to death in the city of Hanahan and provide the housing needs and services needed to do that because we really are a variety of multi-generational families.
Now, Mayor, I know the city of Hanahan, I'm looking at it right now in my mind, but where exactly is there land to develop these senior housing units?
Well, that is a great question too, Quintin, and we don't have a lot of it left in the city of Hanahan. We are landlocked, so we can't, and waterlocked. We have lots of water around us as well. So there's not too much room for expansion. There are some new developments coming up in the Tanner Plantation area, not too many though. We're getting pretty built out there. But there is opportunity for redevelopment. And there is opportunity for spot development. So I'll give you an example. Right off Yeamans Hole Road, there's one block that there was this pretty little lake, and there's just a strip of homes going in. I don't know, maybe 8 to 12 homes. It's not a ton, and they're not focused on senior housing. But if you look, you will find spots or redeveloping what's already there and having a purposefulness to it.
Now, let me stay on Yeamans Hall Road. I was just there a couple of weeks ago. But where exactly could redevelopment happen and be ideal for the city?
Well, as far as housing, again, it would kind of be spots here and there. We're already seeing a lot of redevelopment in our downtown area. Actually, you'll find flips on every block you drive down. You'll see, some houses that might need a little love and all of a sudden one new one or one that has been reimagined. But as far as redevelopment, there's a lot of that actually occurring in our downtown area commercially right now. We have 3 different developers that have 3 different spots of land in our downtown, and they are just bringing the commercial to life or back to life. And so there really is a lot of redevelopment, whether it be residential or commercial, happening around the city with a primary focus on the downtown area.
And I want to get back to that in just a second, but I know that earlier you talked about obviously receiving input from the residents, and I know too when you spoke with Lila, you said, "Hey, we received input from data as well." So let me break it down and ask you, Mayor, how many residents did the city of Hanahan actually lost in 2021?
We didn't lose. We've been growing. So over the past decade, we've grown by about 60%. It was actually really interesting. We're in the middle of an appeal process with the census because we felt like the numbers, honestly, there's just no way they could actually be accurate. I know obviously 2020 COVID was a very unique time to poll people and try to get information. And so I'm not surprised that things are off. But if you look at anywhere except for the census, we're coming in around 29,000, just under 30,000, which would put us as the 17th largest city in the state of South Carolina. So we're still looking to get that updated with the census. It's quite the process to go through it, but we're growing. It's crazy. So we didn't lose anyone, we gained.
Now, how much residents did you actually gain last year?
Just in 1 year? Well, you know what? Because the census is off, I don't know. I would have to research that to get additional information, but we're definitely still growing. There's more subdivisions popping up, more houses popping up, apartments, all those things. So there's definitely pluses, not minuses.
Now, how many apartments do you have, and how many houses do you currently have?
I want to say, and again, I'm taking some rough guesses without pulling up that information, but somewhere between 10 and 13,000 houses, I would say, and then apartments, not so sure.
Now, Mayor, how has that data, obviously, when you think about the growth, how has that data from the pace of growth allowed the city to understand existing and actually potential conditions of the city in the future?
Well, I think, this term is used kind of as a catchphrase, but it really does apply, responsible growth. So there has been so much growth on the rooftop. At this point, we're trying to balance it out with putting a focus in on commercial and economic development because growth has to happen. Your city will die if it doesn't. And we've all driven through different parts of the state or the country where we're like, what happened here? People once lived here and now it just looks abandoned. So we don't want that to occur, but we also need to do it in a way that it's not a burden to current residents. So I don't know about the other residents there, but I would love it if my kids, when they grew up, they were able to stay in Hanahan if they were to be close to mom and dad, and that means they need to have houses and jobs and things available. So we want to make sure that we're providing all of those things for the up and current residents while still honoring those that live there.
Now, and I want to jump right into that because that was a big topic in the interview with Layla about responsible growth. So this might be a silly question, but what quality of growth will be required to actually attain this vision?
Can you repeat that question?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. What quality of growth would be required to actually attain this vision that you want as far as responsible growth?
Yeah, I think the word balanced comes to mind right now, where we're providing the services, we're making sure the infrastructure is there. Like when everything is in place, the growth can happen responsibly. The problem is if one comes in before the other, and it really just is a problem in general. I know Berkeley County Schools, they're building schools as fast as they can, but just like every other company, it's where everyone's struggling to have employees to build things, to get the supplies to build things, and then you have to have the money to build it. So once the residents are there, they're paying taxes. Now you have the money, but you kind of want them to build it before the money's there, which, we try to be somewhat conservative with our money in this area. So have the cash, right? Dave Ramsey plan. Let's have the cash and not do the credit. And so you're trying to figure all these out, these different paths in a responsible way to bring in the growth in a way that can really be sustainable and not a burden. And so I really think it is using wisdom and making sure that at minimum there's a plan when possible. Things are in place. If not, there's a plan to have them in place as the growth happens. So it's working closely with those that are wanting to come in and develop, having those conversations with current residents and putting it all together.
Okay, Mayor, well, let me ask you this. What is your cash balance right now for the city of Hanahan?
We have about 12 million in our cash balance, which is actually really, really good. Most cities our size don't have quite that much in there, but we want to make sure we have what we have for a rainy day while spending responsibly.
So what is your tax base right now?
Are you referring to our millage rate, or are you referring
Right.
to?
Oh, yes, that
Right.
too.
So it's in the upper 50s. It's kind of a little complex right now because we have a bond referendum out there. So that's a little bit of a separate millage rate that's put out there. Once that bond is satisfied, that will fall off and just regular taxes will take place. We actually did have our first tax hike, a significant one in a long time. Like I want to say they said it was over 20 years since we've had such a significant one. So if you were paying $1,200 on your house 20 years ago, you were still paying that up till last year. So there was a small adjustment to that across the board with our households, which made me kind of sad, but I'm excited to share that it went to our employees. As everyone knows, we've all been facing inflation, and our employees need to be able to feed their families, our firemen, our policemen, our staff. And so every dollar that was raised specifically went to make sure that we're able to retain and hire talent that will keep the city of Hanahan the amazing place that it is.
Let me talk about that. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
How many employees did you retain last year?
I don't know our exact turnover rate. As with most of the cities in the area, there were definitely some issues in safety. I feel like fire and police has just been rough in general between pay and culture. The city of Hanahan is kind of unique just because they're very supportive and loving, thankfully, to our staff. So they don't always face what's faced elsewhere. And then we really try very hard to be family focused. We have a lot of family values with our residents, and we hold the same values with our staff. And so if one of our staff members has a kid in school and they're getting an award, we're like, go, make sure you're there. Don't miss that award ceremony. So we really try hard to retain. And then we recently got a new HR director that I'm seriously impressed with to see what she's already done since she's gotten there and the plans for the future. We just hired a brand new fire chief. I'm super excited about that. And we did actually get a new city administrator. So there's been a lot of change in the city of Hanahan, but I spent some time actually last week in more of a social setting with our staff, and I've had multiple people tell me that it has been absolutely amazing. They have gelled as a team, and sometimes it takes like some rocky roads to do that. It's not always rainbow and sunshine that brings that, but in the long run, when you get through something tough together, you are tighter and able to work better together. And so we're really seeing at the city, so there's no better time to be working for the city of Hanahan than now, I'd say.
Yes, ma'am. So you hired the city administrator, that is. You have a new fire chief. You have a new HR director. How many job openings do you have left that you want to fill?
Well, there's usually, I'm pretty sure we're just about steady in police right now. I think we have some in fire. Of course, there's always little ones popping up here and there. The big one that we're focused on right now is our city prosecutor. I'm sure, Quintin, you've heard of the loss of our city prosecutor, David Ayler, which our prayers are still with his family. Just such a heartbreaking incident with his family and our city. He was such a benefit. So that's a big one right now that I've received lots of calls about, that they're receiving lots of applications for, and I'm pretty sure they actually close tomorrow. So if there's any interest, we'd love to hear for those that would be interested in that position, but that'll be a big one for the city to fill right now.
And of course, I had the late David Ayler on Quintin's close-ups many times, so he was a great asset to this community, and he'll be greatly missed.
He surely will be. His heart of generosity, I think his legacy that he leaves behind is an example for all of us. So
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And I want to get back to obviously, business at hand. So you talk about obviously, recruiting. How many more people do you want to recruit to the city of Hanahan in the next 2 years?
we are looking to add several more employees. We have just over 100 staff members right now, which is
Wow.
actually kind of tight knit. We're small.
Yes.
We work hard with little and do a great job, but our staff really, really does. They wear a lot of hats. But we are adding 2 new parks. A 53-acre park should be opening in just a couple months. Quintin, you're going to have to come out and have some fun with us at the Hawk's Nest.
Yes.
It's going to have active, passive things. So it's going to need some employees to make sure that the park stays maintained. And then we're in the middle of permitting our next park that already has plans in permitting, ready to break ground, hopefully the next few months as well, on Stewart Street. And so between the addition of the 2 parks and our current parks, we definitely are going to need to add a few people on the maintenance side for Park and Rec, just to make sure that everything is as beautiful as day one when it opens. So those we will be adding this year.
Yeah, I'm going to come up when it's much warmer outside.
Yes, it's going to be, not too hot. You better come before it's steamy in Charleston, but after these crazy days, for sure, somewhere in the spring. We have that elongated spring that everyone loves here in Charleston, so we should definitely take advantage of that in Hanahan.
Absolutely. So when it comes to those maintenance folks, Miss Mayor, how much money do you have in the budget for that?
I don't remember the exact salary off the top of my head, but Hanahan's pretty good about evaluating what do cities our size pay their employees, and let's make sure we're in the middle. We don't want to be at the top or the bottom. We want to be fair. We want to honor, again, those that are here with their tax base and not necessarily be the highest paid. And we really try to compensate, like I said, with being family friendly and making sure we do what we can on the inside to make it such a quality place to work that even if you're not making quite as much, it's worth the quality of life that we offer you. But also we want to pay employees what they're worth. And so we don't want to be at the bottom. And so there's some scales that come out. We look at the scales, we aim for the middle and go from there.
Yes, ma'am. I want to go back to what you talked about earlier, which is in regards to growth and infrastructure. And you're saying that you don't want evil or trying to get ahead of one another. So in the Hanahan situation, which is going actually forth right now?
As far as growth, currently there's some senior apartments going in, which, as I said, this was a need, so I'm happy it's being met. Over in the Tanner Plantation, they are full under construction. There's a new Stanley Martin development coming in the back of Tanner, and then a lot of that spot development. If you just drive around the downtown area, you can find a flip, or it's really a great opportunity for those that are looking to flip. There's a few houses that could use some love. So we work pretty closely with those. If it's a big development, we always say come and meet with our building and codes department before you even start. Save yourself time and money from doing plans, coming, and then we make changes. Instead, sit down with us on the front end, have it go through smooth from day one, and not waste any time and money. So we'll continue to work with everyone that's looking to do that in the city.
Now, what's more ahead of you all? Is infrastructure moving ahead versus growth moving ahead?
One of the challenges that we face, it's a blessing and a curse, Quintin. A blessing and a curse is we don't own roads in the city of Hanahan. Right. So that's like some basic infrastructure. Just yesterday, I met with some residents that were dealing with some drainage on their property, and they wanted us to do some stuff, and we don't own sewer, stormwater either. So we have great relationships with Berkeley County. It is a rare week when myself or our city administrator are not in touch with someone up there about something. And so I'm very grateful for our tight-knit relationships that we can call someone up there. But the truth is we don't have a lot of control over that because we don't build the roads and we don't put the sewer in. So it's important that we maintain those relationships, that we work closely with those at Berkeley County to make sure that things are going along well on every end, from the infrastructure to the actual building. And so that's something that we'll continue to focus on and do.
Now, when it comes to developers, how many developers are actually interested right now in the city of Hanahan as far as making development there?
Well, I would say commercially, more than I've ever experienced. It has been amazing. And I will tell you, I was in an event a couple months ago, I guess it was. I was their keynote speaker, and I did a little Q&A session at the end. And one of the bankers actually raised his hand, and he's like, I've got to know, it was the first question that came out, what is going on in Hanahan? Because I have had person after person coming in and inquiring about getting a loan to do development there. And I shared with him, interestingly enough, we have 3 big big developers that are doing some things right now. And so I think there's just more and more on the horizon. So really three in our downtown area, and then there's another larger developer that is just doing such a great job bringing in some business, bringing in some housing, really forming a nice little main street in the Tanner Plantation area. And then one other developer, so I guess 5, that is in conversation with some other companies doing a partnership that would bring in both commercial and residential. And so there's really still a lot. Again, I think our focus has shifted a bit to the commercial side because it has grown so significantly on the residential side. We've got to catch up to make sure we keep taxes low, to make sure we provide the services that we need, talking about infrastructure. And so that is coming. It's happening. We're working closely with them to make sure it's done right.
And I want to go back to, obviously, responsible growth. So what's the biggest difference about, obviously, the draft plan for Hanahan 2040 versus the one that you all began to draft it with?
I really think that it wasn't the vision itself. I think was pretty. I don't want to say set, but right. We all went in with a good vision because it's not like the first time we're hearing from our residents. I have to really give a shout out to our city council and to our staff because we're not inaccessible. We're not too big of a city that you don't know how to get in touch with the mayor and you don't see her in the grocery store, or you're not talking to one of the council members at the ball field. Like, that's just standard for us. And so these are conversations that we're having regularly. So when you go to put down a plan, you could say, this is what I've already heard. And then when you bring it back to the public, you're able to tweak it and really get very specific. I mean, the document wound up being large, very large. And that's a good thing, I think, for a plan. And one thing I did express, and I'd love to express it again here, is that it's a fluid, living document. This is not a printed off, in cement, done, chiseled. It's fluid, and it's something that is going to continue to change. But the truth is, if you don't have a map where to go, you're just going to be all over the place. So you have to have a direction that you're heading in, and we'll take it from there. So it was really done well. I feel like they started well and finished even better.
Now, Mayor, what initiative does the city have in place to partner with landowners to help with responsible growth?
I think really it's in the conversations. I know I feel like I just keep talking about our communication a lot, but really isn't that key. I think it's having those conversations sometimes informally. I might be at an event with the Metro Chamber of Commerce, or I might be, at some other meeting that had nothing to do that. And next thing you know, I'm meeting someone and we're going, hey, wait, you just shared this. Well, we have this spot in Hanahan or this need, and it would work here. And let's continue this conversation. And sometimes it is those continued conversations where we choose to meet and we say, let's get around a table. Let's bring our staff to the table. Let's see who we have to work with to make this happen. We just had a development meeting this week, and there's something that we're not so sure if it's going to pass or not. We sat down and said, how can we make this work? If we don't think this will work this way, this is what the residents are saying. What if you incorporate this in and allow that? So we really work hard on trying to make it a win-win.
Yes, ma'am. And how is the city actively steering the continued growth and development of the city to prevent sprawling development patterns from forever changing the character of Hanahan?
It's interesting you say that phrase, Quintin, the character of Hanahan, because I feel like when we're making a plan like this, there's so many official business terms or standards that we're putting into place. But one of the standards that I'm so proud of our planning commission for putting in place as a guideline was to maintain community character. And I actually just this morning submitted an initial rough draft of a book that I'm writing, co-authored with the second mayor of Hanahan, Earl Copeland, on the history of Hanahan. And one theme that you'll see throughout the entire history of Hanahan is that culture. It is that small town feel. And so I think I was talking with our city administrator yesterday about, change is coming. Developers are here. They're doing a lot of things in the city. And we're actually partnering with a consulting company. We have a meeting coming up at the end of February with them for the first time, because as change happens, we can just, it's America. If, Burger King wants to come in and put a burger place, that's fine. It's America. It's your land to do that. But in the same respect, if we know there are specific needs or specific wants, like we want a mom and pop restaurant here instead, we can go after that and say, hey, we know that this is what our residents want. We're going to pursue it. So, sometimes change is forced and other times change is bucked, but I'm a big believer that change should be directed. We know change is coming. Let's form a little tunnel and direct it where it needs to go from what we're hearing from our residents. And so I think that's a way that we could do that to prevent the bad and keep the good.
And I totally buried this particular, question, and I should have asked you this early in the interview. But what exactly are the residents' needs and wants right now? after this draft has been published with the Hanahan 2040?
I really think the retail is missing in Hanahan. We have great schools. We do have some traffic, but not dramatic traffic in Hanahan. We have a road that is going to be opened up in just a few weeks. That'll connect the whole city. It's been in the works for 20 years. So all of those things are in process. And this is as well, but we still need additional help. I'll give you an example. The city of Hanahan has around a dozen restaurants. And if you were looking at Mount Pleasant, and you and I think, have kind of talked about this in the past.
Yes.
If you were to look at Mount Pleasant, they have hundreds of restaurants. We're about a third of the size of them, so we should have at least 100, maybe 200, and we have like a dozen. The good news is, since I think you and I first talked about this, we have had Famularis come in. We have had Nigel's come in. We have had Los Gorditas come in. And so those voices are being heard. Restaurant owners are coming in going, hey, this is the most central spot in the Low Country. There's a need there for this. The residents are asking for this. And so they're bringing their restaurants to us. But, restaurant shops, things that right now we have to leave the city to do a medical doctor. We have one practice and it's direct primary care. It's not your regular insurance care. We could use a doctor in the city of Hanahan. So there are things that we're pursuing that we have heard from the residents loud and clear. They don't want to have to leave the city limits for it. And so we're trying to bring it in.
And going back to transportation, that is, Mayor, how is the city actively steering the continued growth and development of the city to actually fund transportation programs that will actually improve roads and actually encourage transit-oriented growth?
I love that. You're talking about TOD. You're speaking my language. I serve as the vice chair of the Charleston Area Transportation Committee. So quite the thing to talk about, one of my things. Transportation in the city of Hanahan, our main roads are our main roads, and they flow pretty well. There's some backups, if schools getting in or letting out, you're going to have a little bit of traffic. But outside of that, again, because the city residents really have to leave the city for many services, again, we're working on that. But for now, it's Rivers Avenue or 26. We come along those. So one thing we're excited about is the Low Country Rapid Transit that's coming in. That is going to have 4 stops right along the city of Hanahan's border, within walking distance of that. And we are working with developers because there is transit-oriented development happening around those stations. One of them in particular will be at the corner of Rivers and Remount. That's a main station, and it is less than a mile from the heart of the downtown of Hanahan. And so what an opportunity for developers and retailers to come in, and that's what we're trying to work closely with. I would also say we're becoming a little bit more focused on pedestrian and biking traffic. So the third phase of our Tanner Trail is actually, we just hit a little road bump and wiggled around it, and it was a win-win for the developer that was about to do something and a win-win for the city, and it kept things moving because it has hit roadblock after roadblock, and we just plowed right through it. So we're really working hard on that. But phase 1 and 2, it is a rare day that I'm driving by those, Quintin, and there are not people on them. You see them walking, you see their dogs, you see their bikes, their kids, they're having a blast. And so as, for example, that Bowen and Tanner Hall continue to be developed, the commercial part, and the trail pours right into that, it just becomes a nice day when you could go with your family, walk up the trail, have dinner, go shopping, get your hair done, and walk home. So there's a lot of forms of transportation. We're focused on all of them.
And speaking of space, as you mentioned parks, something's calling me, by the way, on my phone.
Should we do a 3-way call? Bring it right in, Quintin.
Well, what programs does the city of Hanahan have in place to actually protect open space?
So that's a great question, because I feel like there's a lot of confusion on that with residents in general. And before I was in this position, I didn't know either. And so really good opportunity for me to kind of educate right now. It's America, right? So we don't want anyone telling us what to do with our property. We have property rights. But the bad thing is sometimes people want us as the government to go tell other people what to do with their property. But the thing is, once you establish a law, it goes across the board. So either the government's going to come in and tell you what you can do on your property, or we're not. So obviously there are some guidelines. When people build, they have to follow it, and we have zoning and things like that, and that's there for a reason. But outside of that, I so often have a resident message me and be like, hey, I see this development going in here. Why didn't you keep it trees? And it's like, well, it wasn't our land. Someone might have bought it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We had one in place that just started being developed. It was purchased, I want to say 2006 or 2008. I mean, that's a long time ago, but they just held it, and now they've decided to build on it. But it was something that was allowed for back then. So us getting that 53-acre park that we're currently developing, and choosing to have some area where it is parks and fields and stuff like that, but the other part is some of it's undeveloped and some of it's trails in the trees. We really tried to be purposeful about keeping a little bit of everything. And then the same thing with Stewart Street. So we have land that is designated for conservation, designated for park and rec, and those we are going to hold. And then we're going to honor those that are landowners and allow them to do what they purchased their land to do with it. So I think the combination of allowing for all of that.
Now, how will you improve open space and amenity requirements in alignment with your comprehensive plan?
Well, the one thing that the comprehensive plan said was we needed more parks, and that's something that we're coming through on. And that's why the bond went out, which obviously 75%, actually it was more than 75% of the population voted yes to it. So they knew that there was this need for parks. We've answered it, and the 53 acres and then the Stewart Street as well. The Stewart Street one's really pretty. It's on the water. It'll have a boardwalk, kayaking, a kayak launch on it, playground, all these different features to it that'll really provide that green space. But keeping up with our current parks, adding these new ones should really satisfy what was needed and moving forward.
I have two last questions for you, Mayor. When do you anticipate the city of Hanahan actually establishing enhanced housing affordability options in new subdivisions to actually create housing opportunities for all?
It's actually interesting you say that. We have a vision planning workshop coming up with our council, and one thing that we had kind of brought up was ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Just starting to look at some options that we could have, but really, as you know, Quintin, in addition to being the mayor, I'm a realtor, and you can find a house in Hanahan for really cheap or really expensive. I'm really proud of the variety that we offer to the residents of Hanahan. It doesn't matter what your pocketbook looks like. There's room for you in the city. And so we're going to hopefully continue to be able to do that for everyone so that when my kids are old enough, they can afford to live there too.
Now, will the city advocate for building of condos or other multifamily options to encourage home ownership?
Yeah, we have a little bit of everything in the city. So we have the condos, the townhouses, the single family. It just really depends on what the zoning is. And that's where the comprehensive plan came into place. They said, what do we want here? Where would this work? Where wouldn't this work? And they lay it out so beautifully. So obviously, if we're working on our downtown area, we want it to be a more walkable district. Businesses are not going to come unless you allow for some density where people can walk to the business that's coming in. So again, it's being purposeful. It's putting it hand in hand and saying, let's zone it so it allows for that. We could bring the commercial in. It'll have some options for townhouses, condos, apartments that are more affordable than a single family home, partner them together, and it winds up being a win-win. So our focus is definitely on doing that in our downtown.
Now, how will the city actually collaborate with public advisory groups and stakeholders to deploy tools to create varied housing options?
I wouldn't say we have anything in particular. I think it's really just those conversations. When someone comes to us, it really is small town America where we have that one-on-one conversation and say, how do we make this work for you? And if it's not, what can we do? Do we need an out-of-the-box solution to make it work? So there's no formal committee or toolbox in place. But honestly, I think it's kind of better when you get to just sit down with the mayor or sit down with the buildings and codes guy and we say, listen, let's make this work.
Yes, ma'am. Now, going back obviously to what you talked about as far as density, how would you determine the effectiveness of a density bonus for percentage of low and moderate income housing in new larger subdivisions?
Well, we recently changed some of our density. Again, it was more in the downtown area, but we went from 3 stories high to 4 stories. And the purpose of that was to attract new, but also to encourage the redevelopment of what's there, because we want it to be affordable. We want it to be nice too. And I think sometimes the public assumes that if it's affordable or attainable, we keep naming it these pretty things, but their concept is not nice. And I want to make sure that we in the city of Hanahan focus on nice but affordable. And so by allowing the current apartment complexes that are there to redevelop and add a layer, they can then bring in the money needed to do what they could do, make it nice, make it affordable, and have, again, a win-win.
What is it, Mayor? Is it affordable, or is it attainable, or is it workforce housing?
I love it. You even added workforce in there. Listen, Quintin, we can pick a word today. They'll give it a word tomorrow. But the truth is, everybody's in a different place in life, and everybody's valuable, and what they do matters. And it doesn't matter if they have a job that pays a little or a lot, they need a place to live. This is a general basic need of humans. And so we all need to do what we can to make sure everybody has a place to live. And Hanahan's really great about that. I mean, we're always helping neighbors. We're doing what we can. And so we'll continue to do that and make sure that people do have houses, whether they're on this end or this end of the spectrum.
Hanahan Mayor Christie Rainwater, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks, Quintin. Always good to see you. Have a great day and stay warm.
Likewise, I will. I'm freezing out here.